Welcome to the Terran Expanse, where humanity's ambition knows no bounds and the stars themselves bow to the might of the Dominion. Join us in this gripping tale of conquest, defiance, and the price of survival as humanity faces the Aelari, a species of breathtaking beauty and harmony, standing as the last beacon of hope against an unstoppable war machine. They whispered promises of salvation and screamed warnings of destruction, but humanity, in its arrogance, heard only the promise. Earth had been a graveyard once, the bones of nations scattered across its desolate plains. Climate collapse, nuclear wars, and resource depletion had nearly extinguished the species, but from the ashes rose a singular vision, the global Dominion. Born of desperation and steeled by necessity, the Dominion unified the fractured remnants of humanity under a single banner. Their doctrine was simple: survive at any cost. By the 29th century, Earth had transformed from a dying husk into a hub of galactic conquest. With technology that harnessed the energy of stars and weapons capable of shattering planets, humanity spread like wildfire. To the Dominion, no species, no civilization, no ideal was more important than the survival and expansion of the human race. When the Dominion's explorers stumbled upon the Aelari, it seemed at first like an opportunity for diplomacy. The Aelari were a species of breathtaking beauty, their translucent skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with their emotions. Their technology was unlike anything humanity had encountered, a harmonious blend of biology and energy that seemed more alive than artificial. Their cities, glowing softly in the twilight of their verdant homeworld, Lasara Prime, looked like they had grown from the planet itself. But humanity did not come to admire. The Aelari's energy technology, untainted by industry, was an untapped resource, and their peaceful nature made them seem weak. When the Dominion envoy demanded access to Lasara Prime's resources, the Aelari refused. Humanity declared war. The Dominion's war machine descended on Lasara Prime like a storm. The first wave of dreadnoughts fired upon the planet's shimmering cities, reducing crystal-like spires to molten glass. Aelari defenders, equipped with energy shields and plasma projectors, fought valiantly but were overwhelmed by the raw firepower of the human fleet. The Aelari had never encountered a species so ruthlessly efficient in destruction. Commander Darius Kane stood aboard the flagship Invictus, watching the carnage unfold on the view screen. He was a man forged in the fires of Earth's unification wars, his face a map of scars and his eyes cold steel. To him, the Aelari were another obstacle, another enemy to crush beneath humanity's boot. Yet, as he watched the soft glow of their cities snuff out, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. "Commander," said his second-in-command, Lieutenant Harper, "the bombardment is complete. We've neutralized all major defensive structures. Ground forces are awaiting your orders." Kane nodded. "Send them in. No survivors." The Aelari, though unprepared for humanity's brutality, were not without their own strength. Their energy fields disrupted human sensors, and their knowledge of Lasara's terrain allowed them to launch effective counterattacks. Small victories, fleeting but significant, kept their hope alive. In the ruins of Elion, the planet's capital, a fiery young leader named Tellus emerged as the face of the resistance. She was unlike any Aelari the humans had encountered, sharp-tongued, defiant, and relentless. Her speeches rallied the broken fragments of her people, and her raids struck fear into even the hardened Dominion troops. For Tellus, the war was not about victory but defiance. "They may take our world," she told her followers, her voice echoing through the bioluminescent caverns where they hid, "but they will never extinguish our light." The Dominion had underestimated the Aelari's resolve. Tellus led a series of daring raids on human supply lines, using her people's intimate knowledge of Lasara's energy fields to outmaneuver the Dominion's clunky war machines. Her victories, though small, became legends among her people. Commander Kane, tasked with crushing the resistance, grew frustrated. "They're like shadows," he growled, slamming his fist onto the war table. "Every time we close in, they vanish." Lieutenant Harper hesitated. Perhaps they're fighting for something we don't understand, sir." "They're fighting because they're afraid," Kane snapped. "And fear won't save them." but fear wasn't what drove Tellus. It was love, love for her people, her planet, and the way the light danced across Lysara's oceans at dawn. She fought because she could not bear to see that beauty replaced with the cold gray of human industry. In a skirmish near the crystalline forests of Eris, Tellus and Cain faced each other for the first time. She stood amidst the ruins of her people's sacred grove, her glowing skin dimmed by exhaustion but her eyes burning with defiance. "Do you even know what you're destroying?" she demanded. "Survival isn't pretty," Cain replied, raising his weapon. She didn't flinch. "Your survival comes at the cost of everyone else's. One day, there'll be no one left for you to conquer." "Then what?" For a moment, Cain hesitated. Then he fired. The Dominion's final assault on Lysara Prime was an act of utter annihilation. Cain led the charge, his fleet bombarding the last Aelari strongholds while ground forces swept through the cities, leaving nothing but ash in their wake. In the heart of Ilion, Tellus made her final stand. Surrounded by the remnants of her people, she fought with a ferocity that stunned even the most battle-hardened human soldiers. But bravery could not overcome the Dominion's overwhelming firepower. When the battle ended, Tellus was captured. She was brought before Cain, her once glowing form battered and broken. "You've won," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But at what cost?" Cain didn't answer. The Aelari had been pushed to the brink. Their homeworld was gone, their culture shattered, and their people scattered across the stars. Yet, even in the face of annihilation, they refused to surrender. From the shadows of forgotten systems and the ruins of ancient strongholds, the surviving Aelari leaders gathered for one last desperate gamble. Tellus, though a prisoner of the Dominion, had become a symbol of defiance. Her image, captured in propaganda holos, was smuggled across occupied systems, inspiring whispers of rebellion. The Aelari's spirit, dimmed but not extinguished, found new strength in those whispers. The remnants of the Aelari fleet, now scattered across distant nebulae, began to coalesce around a single hope: the activation of the Erebas, an ancient artifact of unimaginable power. Hidden in the deepest reaches of their star system, it had once been a tool of creation, a device used to channel the lifeblood of stars into new worlds. But now, it would become a weapon of desperation. The last great Aelari fleet gathered near the dying star known as Velis A. Its unstable energy fields cloaked their movements from Dominion sensors, buying them precious time. Among the fleet were the few remaining elders, ancient custodians of the Erebas. Their bioluminescence had faded with age, their once brilliant patterns now a dim flicker, but their knowledge burned brighter than ever. Elder Valen, an aged scholar who had once tutored Tellus, addressed the assembled Aelari via holographic projections. His voice, though weary, carried the weight of millennia of wisdom. "This device was not built for war," he began, his glowing eyes scanning the desperate faces before him. "But war has found us. The Erebas will not save our people, but it may delay the Dominion's march. It may give others time to rise against them." The fleet's commanders, a mix of battle-hardened warriors and reluctant leaders, nodded solemnly. They knew the cost of their plan. The Erebas would unleash an energy wave so powerful that it could destroy a star system. To wield it, the Aelari fleet would have to protect the artifact long enough to charge it, and most of them would not survive the battle. The Dominion detected the Aelari fleet as it prepared to activate the Erebas. Within hours, the Invictus and the Dominion's core fleet were mobilized, racing toward Velis A to intercept. Commander Darius Cain stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, analyzing the reports with grim determination. "They're cornered," said Lieutenant Harper, her voice tinged with an unusual hint of sympathy. "They must know they can't win." "They don't need to win," Cain replied. "They just need to hurt us. And they might succeed." As the Dominion fleet entered the Velis A system, they were met with a spectacle of light and fury. The Aelari, though vastly outnumbered, used their intimate knowledge of the star's unstable energy fields to turn the battlefield into a deadly maze. Ships flickered in and out of visibility, their forms distorted by the pulsating waves of stellar radiation. Aelari fighters darted through the chaos like fireflies, striking at the flanks of the human fleet. Though their weapons were no match for the Dominion's heavy armor, their precision attacks crippled supply ships and weakened key defensive formations. In the heart of the battle, the Erebus began to glow. Its crystalline structure pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to resonate with the star itself, drawing energy from the dying giant. The device's activation triggered a cascade of energy surges, creating brief but deadly shockwaves that rippled through the battlefield. Despite the Aelari's ferocity, the Dominion's superior numbers and firepower began to take their toll. One by one, the Aelari ships fell, their glowing forms extinguished in silent explosions. The Erebus defenders, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with the desperation of a species on the edge of extinction. Aboard the Invictus, Kane watched as his forces closed in on the artifact. "If that thing goes off, it could take half the fleet with it," he said, his voice calm but taut. "We need to neutralize it now." Harper hesitated. "If we destroy it, we'll lose any chance of studying their technology. This device, it could advance humanity by centuries." "Not if we're dead," Kane snapped. "Order the dreadnoughts to target the artifact." Full barrage. But the Aelari were prepared. As the Dominion's dreadnoughts moved into position, a wave of Aelari suicide ships surged forward, ramming the human vessels with blinding bursts of energy. The shockwave from the attacks sent the Invictus reeling, its systems flickering under the strain. "They're buying time," Kane realized. "Harper, focus fire on their command ships. Break their formation." The Aelari fleet's sacrifice bought the Erebus the time it needed. With a final, deafening surge of energy, the artifact activated. A blinding wave of light erupted from the device, spreading outward in all directions. The wave obliterated everything in its path: ships, asteroids, even the star itself began to destabilize under the strain. The Dominion fleet, caught in the periphery of the blast, suffered devastating losses. Entire squadrons were vaporized in an instant, their remains scattered like dust across the void. But the Invictus survived, its shields barely holding against the wave's outer edge. As the light faded, Kane surveyed the aftermath. The Erebus was gone, its energy spent, and with it, the last remnants of the Aelari fleet. "They gave everything," Harper murmured, her voice heavy with disbelief. "And it wasn't enough," Kane replied. "Though the Erebus had dealt a severe blow to the Dominion, it had not stopped them. The Aelari's sacrifice was heroic, but humanity's war machine was unstoppable. The relentless system, once a beacon of hope for the Aelari, was now a graveyard of stars." As the Dominion fleet regrouped, Kane stood on the bridge, staring into the void where the Erebus had been. For the first time in his long career, he felt the weight of his victories. "They fought well," he admitted, his voice barely audible. Harper looked at him, surprised. Do you think we're the villains in this story?" Kane didn't answer. Instead, he turned away, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "There's more work to be done." And with that, the Dominion moved onward, leaving the ashes of the Aelari behind. The fleet moved onward, the stars above Velis shrinking into nothingness as the Dominion dreadnoughts engaged their warp drives. The graveyard of shattered Aelari ships, once so brilliant in their defiance, now drifted lifeless in the void. Among the wreckage lay the final remnants of a species that had once lit the galaxy with their beauty and innovation. Commander Darius Kane stood alone on the observation deck of the Invictus, staring out at the vast expanse. The glow of Lysara's distant star, now cold and darkened, faded behind him. It should have been a moment of triumph, another victory for the unstoppable march of humanity, but the taste was bitter in his mouth. Tellus was still alive, though she was barely recognizable as the fiery rebel who had once inspired a planet. Her wings were shattered, her bioluminescence dimmed to a faint flicker, and her body bore the marks of countless interrogations. Yet, as Kane entered her cell, he saw something unbroken in her eyes. "You've come to gloat, haven't you?" she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "No," Kane replied, stepping closer. His boots echoed on the cold metal floor. "I came to understand." "Understand?" She laughed, a bitter, rasping sound. "You'll never understand. You don't want to." Kane stood in silence for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Finally, he said, "Your people fought well. Better than anyone expected." Tellus looked up at him, her gaze piercing. "And yet, here I am. Here we are." "You didn't have to fight," Cain said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "You could have joined us. Worked with us." "Joined you?" Tellus's voice rose, her anger rekindled despite her frailty. "You destroy everything you touch. Our forests, our oceans, our light, gone. You take and call it survival. But what happens when there's nothing left to take?" Cain didn't answer. Tellus leaned forward, her glowing eyes narrowing. "You think this is a victory. But it's not. It's a reckoning delayed. You burn through the galaxy like a wildfire, consuming everything in your path. One day, you'll look around and find nothing but ash. And then what, Commander? What will your dominion conquer when there's nothing left to conquer?" Cain met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "We'll survive," he said finally. "That's all that matters." "Survive?" Tellus shook her head, her voice softening. "You're not surviving. You're dying slowly, too blind to see it. And when you realize it, it'll be too late." Cain turned to leave, her words following him like shadows. "Goodbye, Tellus." She watched him go, her dim light flickering in the darkness. "Goodbye, Cain," she whispered. "May your fire consume you." The Dominion fleet pressed onward, their destination another uncharted system, another planet to conquer. On the bridge of the Invictus, Cain stood with his officers, gazing at the holographic display of their next target. A lush, verdant world filled with unknown life. Another prize for humanity's relentless expansion. "The fleet is ready, Commander," Lieutenant Harper said, her voice steady despite the weight of the war behind them. "Good," Cain replied. "Let's move." As the fleet prepared for its next jump, Cain's thoughts lingered on Tellus's warning. He pushed the doubts aside, burying them beneath layers of duty and loyalty. He had no time for philosophy. Humanity's survival demanded focus, strength, and sacrifice. From the observation deck, the Dominion fleet was a sight to behold. Thousands of ships, each a testament to human ingenuity and willpower, stretched across the stars like a constellation of steel. They were more than a fleet, they were a message to the galaxy: humanity was unstoppable. The last remnants of the Aelari had been extinguished. Their light was gone, their songs silenced, their culture erased. In their place, the Dominion's industrial machine churned ever onward, turning beauty into power, life into conquest. As the fleet jumped to warp, the stars blurred into streaks of light. Behind them, Velisay faded into darkness. Ahead, the galaxy waited, vast and vulnerable, its riches ripe for the taking. Far from the Dominion fleet, in the quiet of her cell, Tellus stared at the cold metal walls. Her people were gone, her planet destroyed, but she did not weep. Instead, she closed her eyes and began to hum, a soft, haunting melody that echoed in the silence. It was an old Aelari song, a fragment of a culture that refused to die completely. Somewhere, she believed, her people's light still burned. Perhaps in the memory of a lone human commander, or in the whispers of distant stars. Perhaps it would take millennia, but the wildfire that was humanity would burn itself out. And when it did, she hoped something new would rise from the ashes. But for now, the galaxy belonged to the Dominion. Their march was endless, their hunger insatiable, their victory inevitable. For now. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe for more galactic epics, and hit the bell to join us for our next interstellar adventure.